Welcome to the Saranac Lake Effect Show. We're here again on a sunny day in Cedar Street Studios. We have not yet renamed the studios, but we're working on it.
No need.
Welcome, Justin. Hope you had a good holiday.
You too, buddy. Glad to be here, and looks like we have our first in-studio guest.
Yes, this is a landmark occasion. Yeah. In-studio guest.
Be the one that launches us. We're going to get into the tens and tens of views. All right, well, we got Kirk Sullivan here. He was gracious enough to, again, humor us as a guest on the podcast and help us as we learn as we go here. But, we're in today to talk with Kirk about a lot of different things. He's a native son of Saranac Lake, but I just wanted to kind of tee it up and say, you are the owner-operator of Bing Bang Boom Productions, and just wanted to hear a little bit about, what that company is, how it started, and how it all came to be, and a little bit of your history of, I know that you left Saranac Lake and came back. So
all true. Thank you for having me, gentlemen. This is a very exciting occasion to be here on the show. So I own Bing Bang Boom Productions. It's a video production company. I've been a filmmaker for about 20 years now. Grew up in Saranac Lake, as mentioned. Went to film school out in Los Angeles. Spent a little over a decade in Los Angeles pursuing the filmmaker's dream of carving out a career as a professional filmmaker. Had a lot of twists and turns along the way. Had some successes as a screenwriter. Directed a feature film. Worked on all sorts of feature films. Worked on all sorts of projects out there. It was a great time out there, but ultimately my goal was always to come back to Saranac Lake when I was ready to raise a family. So the hope was that I'd have built a career that was sustainable enough that I could find a way to be back here raising a family, but still maintain some semblance of a career. So, about 5 years ago, we had our daughter, Savannah, who Jeremy's wife is the wonderful teacher of. And we decided to come back. The time was right. We found a house. We came back. My career wasn't quite where I hoped it would be or thought it might be at that point, but we kind of took the jump and figured out. We figured it out as we go. And knock on wood, so far so good. Things are working out. My company now has become quite busy making commercials and ads, many ads in the political ad making space in these last few years, which was a complete surprise, unexpected surprise for me. I never saw that coming or imagined I'd be a political ad maker, but kind of fell into it about 5 years ago. And for the past 5 years, been very busy making ads all over the country, but primarily from here, producing the vast majority of them from here in Saranac Lake. And now very happy to be here with my lovely family. I'm neighbors with Justin. We're childhood friends. And so now being able to live here and work here, some might say is a dream come true.
And so, obviously you hear of a lot of people that live out in Hollywood or work in Hollywood that eventually do leave to go live in the mountains or whatever in Montana or something when they're later in their careers. But you weren't early in your career, but you weren't at the end of your career, and you still figured out a way to move back to Saranac Lake. And like you said, that wasn't an easy transition. So what was that? You mentioned wanting to raise your family here. Was that really it? Like the motivation of like, we're going to have a family and Saranac Lake is where I want to be? Was it the only place? Was it other options?
Yeah, for me, it was basically always the only option. My wife felt a little differently for the first few years. She's from Lake Placid. She's a Lake Placid native. And she didn't kind of ever imagine her life being one where we would come back here, where she would come back here. But soon after we got together, it was very clear that was a high priority for me, and she kind of came around to it. And once we had our daughter, it became very clear that this was a wonderful place to raise a kid. It was not tenable for us to buy a house in Los Angeles and raise a family at the time. So that was a big driving factor. It was like, we want to own a house, can't afford to do it here, so where can we do it? There was a moment where we considered like Asheville, North Carolina, which has some similarities and kind of vibe and aesthetics to Saranac Lake. And we were intrigued by that, but at that point, it was kind of like, we would eventually want to end up here anyway. So we bit the bullet, and it really was inspired by the house we found. We found a gorgeous old house, and for a fantastic price at the time. And so we just put in the offer. We were surprised they accepted it, and that kind of kickstarted the whole operation. So yeah, it was I wouldn't say a rocky road, but certainly a transition. For my business, shortly thereafter, the pandemic hit. And so, of course, that changed things for us. It changed things for everybody. For my career, it was, as I said, just totally unexpected, but actually became just a very surprising kind of, it worked out for me in a really unexpected way. I became very busy, and I became very productive at producing content remotely, which was a brand new concept at the time. So for that first year of the pandemic, when nobody was traveling and shooting, I became very busy just finding ways to start producing ads remotely from here in Saranac Lake, having crews on the ground across the country, doing some very limited, self-taping with people where I'd be monitoring it over Zoom. And then as that kind of evolved and developed, I eventually was directing commercials for Disneyland from here in Saranac Lake, where a full crew in Disneyland, I'm seeing what the camera's seeing. My face is on a screen on set with a speaker. I'm talking to the talent, saying pan left, pan right, or can you do it again this way or that way? Which, every time that happened, that just blew my mind. I'm sitting here in Saranac Lake, there's a blizzard outside, but I'm on set in California directing like a legitimate commercial. And so as that was happening, I'm just like, wow, this is something I never could have imagined in a million years. That was really, wouldn't have been possible without the pandemic happening. And now that type of remote production has slowed down post-pandemic, but we still do a decent amount of it, and certainly kind of made a lot of clients more comfortable with the idea of me not being on set, so I haven't had to travel as much. I would say the biggest transition for me moving back here initially was I was traveling like crazy.
Yeah.
I was flying everywhere all the time. It was kind of fun at first, but then it wears you down when you're trying to raise a family.
Yeah.
So for me, I've been very fortunate to not have to travel as much these last 2 years.
Can I go back a second? So you said that you always had the desire and hope to come back to Saranac Lake, yet you got yourself into the film industry. So did you ever, you obviously didn't create or try to get into an occupation that you thought would work in the Adirondacks. Like that's kind of a push-pull or a yin-yang thing going there. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so a little bit more backstory. So my father was an independent filmmaker here in Saranac Lake when I was a kid. So his whole career was, defined by this desire for him to carve out this existence as a ruggedly independent filmmaker in this place that he loves, that, knowingly is so remote and so difficult to do, which at that time was, 100 times more difficult than now. But to me as a kid, it was not weird. That's just what my dad did. He was making movies. He made 2 feature films here in the Adirondacks. First feature film ever fully produced in the Adirondacks, as far as I'm aware. It was Cold River in the late 70s. And then his second film was a autobiographical film called The Beer Drinker's Guide to Fitness and Filmmaking, also known as Sullivan's Pavilion, which was about him trying to build a career and raise a family here in the Adirondacks as a filmmaker. So I was in that film as a 2-year-old baby.
Okay.
And for the rest of his life, he passed away when I was 14. He was trying to make more movies. He was always writing screenplays. He would always be on calls with agents and trying to get actors attached and just do the whole, filmmaker thing. So, and then he always had a camera out. We were always doing little shoots. And so for me, it was natural.
You were born into it.
I really was. Right. And then so it just wasn't this, out of the ordinary, unusual pursuit. And, so shortly after he died, I basically, started picking up his cameras and toying with them. Justin and I were in the first video club as 6th and 7th graders back in middle school, which I don't know if Saranac Lake still has, but that was awesome.
Shout out to Mr. Lapierre. He's out there.
Yeah, he really taught me editing on VHS systems. And it was a big deal because that was like, even though I grew up with my dad being a filmmaker, I never sat down at the edit machine and actually made all my own things before being in middle school and making our own projects.
And he would hand us these, probably at the time, very expensive cameras to 6th, 7th graders and go, all right, go. And we just had like free reign to go around the school and the community and then sitting there, I don't know what you call it, the little kind of button, little edit machine goes back and forth. And we went on a spring break once and came back and we learned how to dub music in over. It was definitely, I was curious how when how much Video Club did kind of propel that continued passion for filmmaking. It
definitely played a big part because for me as a kid, it was one of the first activities, it was one of the first school related activities that I would really get excited about and actually have a good time, doing. And so we'd stay after school sometimes and it would just be really fun. And so it was one of the first, even though I was around all this filmmaking stuff, it was never mine. It was my dad's thing. And so this was the first time I got the chance to play with it. And so that was huge because it just kind of lit it ignited the spark of curiosity for me to be like, oh, this is cool. This is something that, I really enjoy doing. And then later in high school, we started to do it more. There's no more video club, at least maybe there was a video club in high school. I thought
I was aware of, yeah.
And I think, anyway. we started making our own little fun projects through high school, just silly little short films, skit stuff. And I just continued to like it. And then senior year in high school, I did an independent study. Shout out to Mrs. Clark, who was my instructor or supervisor for the independent study program. And that was a huge project. So I basically made a 45-minute movie that involved all the students, all the teachers, like big scenes. We did a heist at the formerly Sugar Creek Market, which is now the Verizon store, where the police had to show up because they had fake guns. They thought it was real.
Yes, yeah, that was an interesting experience, yes, to say the least.
It was like a real production, like producers, people like, it was put in high school.
Is that on YouTube yet?
No.
Did you find those VHS tapes yet?
But I found that old tape of that, and the audio is missing from it.
Oh.
I tracked down Mr. Lapierre.
Well, that was such a great example of like this running around of, we're in the Verizon store, Sugar Creek at the time, and literally myself and a couple other people were pretending to rob it and holding bags that had like the money symbol on them, like it's a 1950s.
In cooperation with the cashier.
Yes, the people,
cashier guy who was also our classmate.
but not wise enough to be in cooperation with the local PD.
Yeah.
So they show up with literally guns drawn, and we're like, "Oh, calm down, it's fine." They're like, "What are you talking about?" So
it was intense. It was
great.
Yeah. So note to kids, if you ever do a scene of fake firearms, you have to alert the authorities so nobody gets confused. But learning curve for us. That was really the moment. I think that senior independent study is when I really took on a project, and it required dozens of hours after school editing and figuring it out. And that was the first time I just realized, like, wow, this is something I could really do, and this is something this is the only thing I could really imagine myself dedicating myself fully toward. So it took a few more years to kind of figure out how to really pursue that path, and that eventually took me to film school. But at that point, I just didn't see it as this unrealistic possibility. I just saw it as something
That's
I could
great.
figure out. So I kind of determined to figure it out one way or the other.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So where there's a will, there's a way. And so we talked about, obviously, the history with your dad's filmmaking and then the video club and all of that. And then so you graduate high school and film school becomes something that you choose to do. Do you think was film school something where it was like, was it before or after or during film school where you're like, all right, this is definitely my career? Like, was it, how influential was film school? And then once you graduated film school, it's not like graduating law school. I mean, like, right now you're a lawyer. It's like, all right, you have a film degree, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be making feature films. You did do that, but what was that process like?
Yeah, so I'd say before film school, I'd already had my mind made up. I made a couple more pretty substantial short films in between high school and when film school really kicked off. So I ended up going to one college, Wingate University. I ended up doing an extra year of high school, postgraduate year at Phillips Exeter Academy, where I did another independent study, made another short film. And then I did a 1 year at college, a small college in North Carolina called Wingate University, where I did another film just on my own in the summertime. And then I went to film school. So by the time I went to film school, I'd already made 3 like pretty legit short films. One of them called Loyalty's Lines, we shot here in Saranac Lake, and all of them shot here in Saranac Lake. But got the fire department, the police shut down roads. I was shooting on the road. The fire department came out and lifted me up in their lift so I could get this aerial crane shot. We shot with Mark from Ampersound, was one of the actors. We always incorporated the community as much as I could. And that was one of the things that really actually emboldened me to think I could do it here, is because the community, anytime I came out with camera, the community was ready to step up and help. Whereas you come out with a camera in Los Angeles, somebody comes out with a checkbook and, is asking you how much money you have to shoot here.
Yeah.
And so here it was always like, how can we help? What can we do? And I always just loved that kind of community support anytime I did a project. I went to film school, and in my mind at the time, it was kind of, with or without film school, I'm going to figure this out. And so film school taught me a lot. I'd say, I tell this to kids a lot all the time these days, is the biggest thing that comes out of film school is a community of peers that you go through school with, and that you graduate with, and that you struggle with for the next 5 or 10 years. And that community of peers, especially if you go to film school in Los Angeles, is huge, because that's who's going to end up hiring you. That's
your network.
That's your
It's
a built-in network. Whereas if you just went to Los Angeles by yourself, it's very difficult to kind of find that network and try to find like-minded people who are believe in you or help you or whatever. So I learned a lot about the right, quote unquote, right ways to be a filmmaker at film school, which in hindsight, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because before film school, I was very, prolific for a young filmmaker, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I would just go out with cameras, and I had, no inhibition, no kind of fear of doing it the wrong way. You go to film school, and it's like, oh, you have to have a cameraman, you got to have a sound man, you got to have. It's actually much more complicated, and there's certain rules you're supposed to follow, and it actually kind of caused me to stop being so productive following film school. I'm like, how am I supposed to shoot something if I can't afford to rent a camera and get a cameraman and get the light guys and get the everything? And so it taught me how to do things the right way, but it actually kind of prevented me from shooting more because I felt a little unprepared, or I didn't have I just didn't have the money and the resources to pull together a real cruise at the time. But it gave me this tremendous network. And so coming out of film school, those first 10 years were, extremely difficult. I'm just clawing my way, trying to get a paycheck for anything film related. So I'm a production assistant on a music video. I'm a production assistant on a commercial. I'm a lighting guy on a student film. I'm a sound guy on a few films. I don't know how much we want to get into this, but I tripped into this career as a sound man for a few years, where I basically, got known as a sound guy. So the next thing I knew, I'm in Australia doing sound. I'm on a movie in Ukraine doing sound, all over Eastern Europe doing sound. And after like a year or two of that, I realized people only know me as a sound guy. You get pigeonholed very quickly. So I started to realize nobody ever is going to consider me a filmmaker unless I go make something. And so I had to basically stop being a sound guy. I ended up being an assistant producer, working on the Warner Brothers lot. Shout out to Joel Silver, who's a huge, big, successful, legendary Hollywood producer of Matrix and Die Hard and Lethal Weapon. Learned a ton from him about the industry, and then made a short film that got some attention around the industry. And that enabled me to leave that job and actually become a professional filmmaker the first time when people start hiring me.
So you've got this family background. When you talked about your dad and everything he did, and you grew up with it, it became your passion. You realized that, but it didn't come easy either. It sounds like you've had to work to get where you're at.
For sure. There's no easy path to being a professional filmmaker that I've figured out, certainly. But yeah, I had to really spend a lot more years than I ever would have thought trying to figure out how to actually navigate this industry and get to a point where people give you money to do what you want to do. I did wedding videos for a number of years. I did all sorts of things, but it wasn't until about 10 years after film school when I made a short film that got the attention that people started actually thinking of me as like, oh, here's a guy I could trust, could actually make something, and actually give him some money to do it. And even then, it took more years. Then I'm writing screenplays all the whole time. Nobody's interested in the screenplays. Finally, people start reading the screenplays. I get a manager. I have a writing partner. We start getting hired for screenplays. So even then, I kind of have one foot in the screenplay world, one foot in I'm making mall videos. I'm making all these commercials for malls and stuff. So I'm doing that type of production, which has nothing to do with Hollywood, but I'm in Hollywood doing it. And then, like I said, right when I started moving back here, I made my first political ad. It was for a local congresswoman, Katie Wilson. She was running for Congress at the time against Elise Stefanik. And she asked me to make a video for her as a favor. I'd never made a political ad before. I agreed to it. Going into the shoot, it was like summertime. I, gave up my last weekend of the summer or something. I'm like, oh, why did I agree to this? Get a small camera crew to come for practically no money. We shot it, ended up being just really strong. She's a tremendous, very impressive woman, very great candidate. The video kind of had this organic, authentic feel to it that, unbeknownst to me, was very kind of unorthodox in the political ad making space. This big time agency happened to see that video, and that agency has been primarily responsible for just shoveling work at me for the last 5 years since they liked that video. But so I tell young filmmakers all the time, just say yes to everything, make stuff, and eventually it'll be good enough. People will see it, and it will turn into something. But that was such a huge lesson for me. Like I said, I was a little reluctant to do it, and now it's turned into the last 5 years of my life. That's how I make a living, basically, the last 5 years.
Well, that and the idea of putting out content, I remember even at a young age, you were always the idea of putting out content, and that was kind of ahead of your time in the sense that now, like all young people, many are putting out content because everyone has their own YouTube page or they have their TikTok account. And everyone's putting out content. Everyone's got a comment. We have a podcast now. We're putting out content.
That's right.
But that really does seem to be the case. So, but you've done you're literally traveling the world, taking every job you can in the film industry, sometimes broadly defined, and then you have connections. You're meeting people like Joel Silver, legendary Hollywood producer, but still, you start quote unquote making it, the dream to make it. You decide to let me make this harder on myself and uproot and move back to Saranac Lake.
Yeah, I just, Los Angeles is a tough place to live. And so after a certain number of years and seeing my career at that moment felt like it was really, there was a steady incline, steady progress. So I felt like I was at a point, certainly I wasn't at a stable point where I could like call the shots and come and go as I please. But I felt like I was at a point where, I kind of figured out this game enough. It's all about, having periodical meetings with executives every few months, especially at the time of making a living with screenwriters. And you go away for months and write nobody's where you are. So I kind of thought like, okay, I think this is the moment I can kind of get away with like, nobody really knows where I am anyway. As long as I show up to the meetings every few months, I'll be okay. So it was certainly a risky move. My management and my agents at the time, supported me, but they kind of had that look in your eye like, oh, good luck. We've seen this before. Like, we might never see you again. But it's difficult for me. It's been a little bit of a challenge, and the whole dream come true idea. My dream was never to be a political ad maker.
Sure.
My dream was to be making movies that I'd write and direct, and so that part of the dream has not come true. I'm still chasing that. I'm still trying to find a way to make that happen. My Hollywood career has kind of plateaued since that moment. I was going up. I was hired to write a few movies for some big studios, and I don't think it's directly tied with the fact that I moved away. That probably plays into it a bit, but the pandemic played a huge part in it. I mean, just Hollywood really slowed down. Nobody's getting hired as frequently as things pre-pandemic. Still, the industry's still figuring out where it's going. So I've been fortunate that I found a way to make a living here and still be doing what I love, but it's not the exact version of what I thought it would be, which is fun.
So I think we want to make sure we talk about some of the things that you're doing right now in and for Saranac Lake, because I think it really gets to the whole purpose or why Justin and I have gotten into this podcast thing beyond just listening to each other talk. That's a secondary reason. Primary reason is to explore the people that are making this awesome community better. And so I think we should talk about I don't know, what do we call it? The school PSA? Yeah. Is it a PSA?
Yeah.
And then we also want to talk about the videos you're making for the village of Saranac Lake and the town of Harrietstown. So I want to make sure we explore those because they're both pretty cool.
Well, yeah, because it sounds like you could just live in Saranac Lake and still make your living with nothing to do with Saranac Lake, but also in your very busy schedule, still finding time to do things that are supporting and helping the town grow.
Yeah,
absolutely. I also do want to touch on this before I forget. The ability to, make my career here has been just amazing to me. Like I said, just, even though we're in the middle of nowhere, I want to make people aware that things are possible with high-speed internet, Amazon Prime, and Cape Air. It's really possible to be here and be connected to the outside world. And so just those three factors have been so surprising to me, how just seamlessly it's allowed me to, create work and that's connected to everywhere else and without missing a beat. So, having that infrastructure in place has allowed me to take on projects that are locally based and not really financially driven. And that's just, every time I do that, I feel like I'm really cracking the code to, why I want to live here and also create things here. So, yeah, I think so. There's actually three projects I'd love to just touch on. One, the first Saranac Lake High School PSA, which sportsmanship.
Right.
So, yeah,
yes.
A few years ago.
Yeah.
And that's a great example of. So Eric Bennett had the idea. Shout out to at the time he's the athletic director. He had this concept. He told it to me in a bar. I hear concepts in bars all the time. They're always horrible. He told me this one, and I was like, "That's actually a really good concept." So he said, "Let's make it happen." So it's another example of being like, "Hey, we have this idea." And everybody at the school, yeah, let's do it. So it's just like, there's no no's. Everybody's just like, let's figure out a way to do it. And that's just the dream come true as a filmmaker. Usually all you do. Yeah, we go, we spend one day in the school. They have an auditorium, bring all the kids down. We have a couple hours to shoot it, if that, maybe an hour and a half. But we have a solid plan. I brought in a team from Burlington, mostly as cinematographers and lighting guys and sound guys. And we got to shoot this, pretty strong 30-second spot with a great message, which was about sportsmanship and how parents should be behaving at games, and it was just an awesome opportunity for me to write and direct something, which, as I said, that's really what I want to be doing. That's kind of creative and clever, that has the support of the community, that has a good message, that also showed, I love the idea of doing a production and having all the young kids in our community actually see like, oh, that's what it takes to make a commercial.
Yes,
absolutely.
Looks like. I just love that, having a chance to kind of just work in front of this built-in audience. And that project ended up having tons of legs. It aired on the women's Final Four on CBS unexpectedly. It's been Rex Chapman retweeted on Twitter and got like hundreds of thousands of retweets and things. So it's like, that was just another great example of like, just make something and you don't know what's going to happen with it. And it actually got tons of legs. I've been contacted by other brands who want me to do similar things to that. We talked about making more of those types of videos. So that was huge. Just a great experience for me and for everybody involved in it.
Yeah.
Then I think then so the next this summer I shot a project in Saranac Lake High School, and it wouldn't have been possible without the support of Diane Fox, the school board, Josh Dan, the principal. We got to shoot in school for about a week in the summertime, which was a musical. So we shot a musical that's all about helping kids. And first and foremost, I have to shout out the Adirondack Foundation who gave me grant funding for this project. I love the Adirondack Foundation. But so they gave me grant funding to create this musical project that's all about helping kids navigate life after high school and helping them understand that there's plenty of options. Everybody's definition of success is different. And so the project encourages kids in around 9th or 10th grade to start thinking about what makes them curious. What are they interested in? Encourages them to start talking with adults about those interests and start to learn about the different pathways that exist that can lead to success for them in their lives. And it's a big conversation now because, college isn't for everybody. And there's a lot of pathways to success, whether it's vocational school or community college or internships or apprenticeships or mentorships that a lot of local kids should hear. And, it's a big deal that we have to try to find a way that some of these kids who graduate from our local schools come back to our communities, not 10 or 15 or 20 years later, but actually find ways to build their careers from here because it's possible. But we need more of that. So it was a great project to be involved with. I just released that like last month or so.
Yep.
It's got a lot of love on TikTok, which has been fun, but kind of surprising journey figuring out the whole TikTok universe. But that's
when you do figure it out, could you help me
enlighten Jeremy?
That
I'll try. We're going into actually Saranac Lake High School in January, and we're showing to all the 10th graders in their English classes. And we're going to be talking with them. They're going to be filling out questionnaires about it, and I hope to use it as a template that we can then bring to other schools around the Adirondacks. And I really hope to make this video part of the curriculum for schools around the Adirondacks and maybe beyond. So that's been very, very fulfilling project.
Well, and that's great too. I mean, it's not just about vocational school, but I think, watching the musical and that message to me resonated so well because for some reason, vocational school has been stigmatized. It's like, oh, well, if you can't go to college, you could do this. And whereas you're putting it as, no, this is actually a legitimate option. And especially thinking about kids growing up and getting a trade and coming back or just staying because, I mean, you mentioned you bought a house here that was an old house. I have an old house. Jeremy's, we all have houses we're fixing up. And just in this small town, trying to find somebody who can do the work is incredibly difficult. And then if you find someone, that person can really name their price because it's an in-demand occupation. So exactly. So if you have a local student here and you love this area and you want to find a way to stay, vocational school is a fantastic, whether you become a plumber or an electrician or a contractor, whatever it is, it's an amazing way to make a living in a place that you love.
Tons of opportunity. So I hope the message tracks. I hope the kids enjoy the video and that, they're able to kind of take something away from it.
Yeah.
At the very least, I just want it to be a conversation starter where you watch the video and then you start thinking, what am I curious about? What am I interested about? How could I be a professional in this or that? And,
well, you've lived it, right? I mean, the story you just took us through is exactly what we need more kids to realize, right? It's find your passion, figure out how to just make it work and do it. And hopefully some of them have a desire to either do that here and stay here or go off, learn, grow, do whatever, but realize that, I came from a pretty cool place and I'm going to work my butt off until I can come back and make it work back home.
Right. And or don't leave.
Or don't leave.
There's opportunity
right.
Here too.
Yeah. We need to
more so than ever before.
We need to explore this whole topic more because it really is critical. And what I love about the video and using and going right to the kids and using a medium that they are into is that I think as a society, as parents, as educators, as economic development professionals, we've not done a good job with this whole idea of helping kids find their passion and recognize the opportunities here.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, as a parent, sometimes I think we get in this natural mode of, you got to go somewhere else. The grass is greener, go somewhere else and make a life because I want what's best for you. Not realizing the opportunities that are here.
That's been the template, I think, historically. But I do feel like that conversation's shifting.
It needs to.
And I think it's a slow shift. And I think it's,
right.
It's a very difficult problem or challenge of how to connect with young people and get that message across, because young people have a lot of things on their mind. They're going through a lot of changes. They got a lot of things on their plate. Yep. And old people don't always know how to connect with young people. So.
Right. Well, and sharing too. I mean, so there's a lot of glamour to your current status, but you had a lot of years of struggling. You had a lot of years of so letting young people realize too that this didn't just happen overnight. I mean, you just turned 41 at the age. Am I being ageist right now? No, it's okay. But you spent years struggling to make it work. You alluded to it, taking any job you could get, traveling all over the place, but you weren't living in luxury Hollywood estates when you were doing this stuff. You were making it work. And so, and letting kids know that that's okay too. You're not expected to be. Unfortunately, one of the negatives of social media is they might see some 19-year-old out there who's living large with millions and think, okay, I gotta do that. It's like, well, that's not reality for 99.9% of the population. So getting kids to understand too that it's okay to struggle, and struggling through your struggle, you learned a lot of new skills that have now allowed you this amazing lifestyle where you can do what you love in a place you love.
Right. Yeah, it's a very nuanced, conversation to have. That's tough, but that's why I hope that the video is able to cut through some of that noise and just get them thinking.
Well, let's keep track of this as you get back into the school and are meeting with the kids and stuff, and do some periodic updates about it. It's a really important topic, really fun.
Get some press out about it and really get the word out about it, and hopefully the story grows, and we'll see how it goes.
So this complements this latest endeavor.
Yeah. So
let's talk about that.
Sure. So recently, I've been commissioned by the Village of Saranac Lake and the town of Harrietstown to create a series of short videos for online social media, create some ads, basically. This kind of came from a couple of years ago. I was just curious that, I've always tracked kind of how Saranac Lake is marketed. And I've never really had a full grasp on it, but it became clear to me that seemingly we're always marketing to tourists. And so I remember I had a conversation with Kelly Burnett, who we all know well, and you've worked with for years, and she has a history in marketing. And I asked, as far as she's aware, has Saranac Lake ever been marketed with the idea of we're not marketing to tourists, but we're marketing for people that want to live here? And she was not aware if that had ever been done. So at that moment, a couple of years ago, I was like, well, that's what I think we should be doing. And I think that's become a somewhat general consensus of we recognize that tourism is a major life force of our economy, but we also recognize that it's a slippery slope, and population's been declining and our student enrollment's declining, so we need more families. It's also a complicated issue because we don't have houses for those families, but we can get into that. So at that moment I thought, well, how can Saranac Lake start, at least start thinking ways to target future residents? And so this opportunity came about where supported by Franklin County, they enabled the village and the town to decide how they were going to spend their marketing money. So I put together a proposal for this idea to create a short series of short videos, and hiring me. So far I produced 3 videos. I'm going to make 5, but each one is different, but they all have the same intention, which is to attract people who might be thinking where they want to raise their families and where they might want to live. It's really to highlight our community. And instead of just highlighting water skiing and skiing and the beautiful mountains, it's about highlighting this kind of neighborly community feel. And so that's just another example of a great opportunity for me to actually write and direct and produce these spots, which normally when I get hired, sometimes I'm writing them, but most of the time it's by committee or the client has a script or whatever. So it's just my creativity is a little limited. with these, it's a subject matter I feel very passionate about, and I've had a lot of freedom to kind of create them in the best way that I see fit, and so that's been great. So the 3 I've created so far, they're all just short 15-second ads, but hopefully they resonate with people, and hopefully they really show our community in this light that's very attractive to people who aren't familiar with our community. And again, it's kind of a conversation starter. The idea is people who are sick of city life in Denver, Colorado, thinking where could I move? They see these videos that really highlight this warm community that we have here, and then they click on a link and go to learn more about what this community is all about,
Right.
how is housing available, what the school system's like, and get the conversation started with them, and so get them started on the path to maybe relocating here.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, and similar to your previous videos you've done with the school, the 2 PSAs there, that this was also, and a lot of your other film projects, these videos, correct me if I'm wrong, are a lot of the people appearing in the videos are not professional actors you're hiring from somewhere else. It's just local people who you're like, hey, come do this thing. Or you obviously you're giving, you're helping, you're writing, but it's not professional actors. It's actually people who live here, who are living this life that you're trying to advertise. Hey, this is possible.
Right. So the videos in themselves are documentary in nature, in that I'm capturing real life, real people. There's some scripted elements to them when I have voiceover work and the way that the kind of narrative is constructed, but the footage is all, we went to the fun run this summer,
Yep.
got great footage of all the kids running in slow motion by the lake, all the parents cheering them on, parents running with the kids. We go to the art walk and see all the people selling things and families, trying on the jewelry and looking at the painting and whatnot. And so just trying to find, the different scenes that we can capture, like farmers market type vibe that show the community coming together, and these kind of just nice moments that we get to experience living here. Kids riding the bikes down the streets together, running through the woods. I'm going to make the reason I haven't made the last 2 is because I want to get some winter footage. So I want to get skiing together, the winter carnival, the parade, the ice palace workers, things like that to show. Just any scenes that show groups of people who are kind of coming together to enjoy the quality of life here is kind of trying to think about.
I got to see the 3 that you've completed so far at a joint village town board meeting, and they're very the authenticity. So you talked about maybe the authenticity of the Katie Wilson political ad you did. These spoke to me as someone who lives here as being authentic, because you have real people, you show real things that real people do here, which makes it a community. And I'm sure the winter ones will do the same thing. But that's the whole point. When you are a visitor here, you can have a great experience, but you might miss what's right beneath the surface, which is this amazing real place with real people that are thriving despite, we all have our challenges. This isn't a perfect place, but there's so many things that make it what it is. And I think I'm really excited by your vision and what the town and village board are trying to get accomplished with it, because it hasn't really been done, especially, maybe in past generations, but with the new media, we've just, in new marketing approaches, it's never been explored.
Right.
Well, and marketing, it has a very authentic feel, as you're saying. So, a lot of times I'd use the analogy of like real estate. If you're looking at like a house online, the pictures you see online, you're like, oh, this looks amazing. Then you drive to the house and you're like, what happened? Like, wow, what special camera did you take these pictures with? Whereas the videos, it's more like, no, hey, here is what life is, right. What can be like, a little bit beneath the surface. I think we've all had the experience. I've at least heard, I've been like the grocery store and heard people you can clearly tell are not from here, they're tourists, and they have that comment of something like, can you imagine if you got to live here? I think sometimes people forget that there is a village here. People that walk in the middle of the street in broad daylight, like this is a town. This isn't an amusement park, which is always funny. But I think, the authenticity is what's so great to see on those videos. We'd be remiss if we didn't ask one more question. And
right. Yes, I think this is really, people have been waiting for this.
Yeah, we've teased it enough.
The dozens of followers at this point have been waiting.
Yeah. So our theme song, as it is, the intro and outro of the podcast, we have it's instrumental, and we alluded to local artists that created it. And with that, let's
Tell
hear,
us the
let's hear the story.
So yeah, as far as I know, we are the only legitimate hip hop group from Saranac Lakes. As far as I know, called Penny King Productions. Myself, Daniel Supernaut, Sam Daring, Corey McGill, CJ Hagman formed a collective back in around 2000, 2001, and started creating rap songs together. At the time, I lived on Ampersand Ave. We had a chicken coop. I turned my chicken coop into a little recording studio. And we just loved rap music. And we had a lot of fun creating rap music and writing lyrics and making music. And at first it started as a fun little thing that we do. And we had little local concerts. I think we had the first ever concert at Blue Seed Studios, like Blue Seed's first ever concert. And over the next couple of years, it just kind of gained more steam. We took it more seriously. When I was in Los Angeles at film school, I had access to this beautiful Steven Spielberg recording stage, which is used for symphonies and movie scores. And I was a TA, so I had access to this. So Penny King boys would come out and stay at my place, and we'd go in, at all hours of the night to record in this beautiful facility, which is always so hilarious because John Williams had conducted orchestras and here we are recording a rap song. So we ended up putting out a few mixtape CDs and one pretty legitimate album. We performed out in Los Angeles a number of times, and we'd always come home and perform over the holidays in the summer here. We had some pretty packed shows at the Water Hole, and that formerly was it Shoes or Cooks at the time?
I think it was Shoes originally. May have evolved into Cooks during your tenure there.
So we had some big, packed shows there, and then ended up having some big shows at the Water Hole. I had a big show at the Higher Ground in Burlington. It was one of our bigger kind of accomplishments. And then, I think after we got out of school and, gave it a little bit of a go, everybody kind of, started recognizing that it was a very lucrative pursuit. So it was always fun, and we're proud of some of the stuff we made. We made a pretty legitimate music video that folks can check out called Peace of Mind.
Okay.
The theme song was, I believe, a song called Crawling Through the Mud, recorded in the Steven Spielberg soundstage at
That's the one we've been using.
There we go.
Yes.
Nailed it. All right.
Yeah, we really like it, and we appreciate the ability to use it.
Absolutely.
And that you signed that release that we never have to pay a dime for it.
We are buying local.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know if we're buying local, but we're supporting local.
So how can people, if they want to get in touch with you and hopefully not pitch you those terrible bar film ideas, but if people want to get in touch about any number of things you've talked about today, if they want to hear more, if they want to talk about a film project they have, whatever it might be, what's the best way to reach out to you?
I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and my website's bingBangBoom.biz, which has a contact button. So any of those ways would be easy enough for folks to reach out.
And now that you've been a guest on this podcast, will you come back?
Sure, whenever.
Okay, great.
Yes.
All right.
I'll take that as a win.
We'll make the studio a little bigger, so we're not.
Right.
This.
Well, there's a lot to
vibe.
check in on with you over the next few months. We'd love to have you back and have some.
There we go.
I love it.
That'll get the views up.
Great. Yes. Awesome.
All right. Well, episode 7 in the books.
In the books. Well, thanks again, Kirk, for being here. This was
really
a lot of fun.
appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, this has been the Saranac Lake Effect Show. Don't forget, you can contact us on Facebook or Saranac Lake Effect Show at gmail.com.
There it is. Till next time.